Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Black Tower Podcast, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Andrew.
I'm JD.
And I am Daniel.
And this is a very exciting day for the Wheel of Time fandom. We are recording this on the 19th of June, which was the return of Wheel of Time Wednesday, with a very exciting announcement about the upcoming TV show.
Woot woot.
If you're a part of the fandom, I would be incredibly surprised by the time you're hearing this on Friday the 21st if you somehow had not already seen the news. But in case you were held captive in a tiny box by a bunch of women that didn't want you to have your own free will, that'll make sense later on. Well, by the title of the episode, actually, so you'll get it. Never mind. But
topical.
The Moraine for the TV show has been cast by an absolutely fantastic actress, Rosamund Pike, who I know most notably for her role as Miranda Frost in the 007 movie Die Another Day with Pierce Brosnan and Halle Berry back in 2002. One of my favorites.
Indeed. She's also incredibly notably been probably one of her most recent roles in Gone Girl, where she actually plays a not insignificantly Moraine-like character. So it is definitely an exciting announcement from Rafe Judkins and the people over at Amazon and Sony.
Yeah, in the Wheel of Time writer room.
Indeed.
I think she's also very well known for her role as Jane Bennett in Pride and Prejudice as well.
Correct.
Among many others. She played Kate Summer in Johnny English Reborn. It's a funny movie. She was in the comedy movie, The World's End.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At World's End.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. That is actually the one Edgar Wright film in the Shaun of the Dead trilogy, the Cordettos trilogy. I don't remember what they actually call it.
I can't remember.
That I missed.
Yep. She also plays Sandy Crowder in Beirut, and two films that are currently in post-production, one scheduled to release this year and one scheduled to release in 2020. This year, The Informer is supposed to come out where she will be playing Wilcox, and in 2020, Radioactive is slotted to come out where she plays Marie Curie. In addition to a whole host of TV shows. Bond Girls Are Forever was a documentary on the ladies of the 007 I want to call it series, cinematic universe, whatever you want to call it.
Saga.
She does voice for Thunderbirds Are Go, and she voices Lady Penelope Creighton Ward and Captain Ridley O'Bannon. I think some of these are British TV shows. And she's got some stage performance as well. And she's in the Voodoo in My Blood music video by Massive Attack featuring Young Fathers, who I would be lying if I said I had ever heard of before in my life, but it's on the page. But her Wikipedia page already has the TBA for her role as Moraine. It actually says main cast of coming series, which it should.
Indeed.
But that's the exciting news. We couldn't record today, especially without acknowledging that, which is why I'm slightly happy that we wound up recording today instead of yesterday.
Yeah. Though, to be fair, I mean, we wouldn't have actually had a fully official thing, but the rumors were swirling even as early as Monday. And so yesterday when they went ahead and made the
it wasn't a rumor.
Yesterday when they announced that they were making the announcement today,
we got told by Nard.
Most people actually sort of knew what it was, though whether there was going to be any other announcements along with it as far as casting or, other production crew that was announced that was important was a question. That ended up actually only being that one role. But, in the end, it was definitely something that if you were up on the forums, you kind of knew was happening. But it was
Yeah.
nice to have it officially.
We got told by Narg, so it had to be true because Narg's
It
smart.
was
Yeah.
exactly. Finding out that it wasn't actually really rumor and that it was official was nice.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's
Indeed.
true.
I bet you Narg actually waited for Rafe Judkins to
Yeah.
come back and announce to him early that Rosamund Pike was going to be in the show. And then he just didn't make it out of the house. Boom. Wheel of Time references.
Oh yeah, you gotta love them. But congratulations, Rosamund Pike, from the days back in 2002 where you were one of the all-time cutest girls to me at that age on TV screen. Now you get to be the wisest female character I've ever read in a book, which I think is incredibly fitting from how she's played her other roles. I think she'll do absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice. And I know that there has been some discussion on, the different forums and whatnot about how she's 5'9", which, I mean, again, in my opinion, definitely go with the person who can act the role the best, then worry about, I mean, and obviously have in mind how the character looks because it is described. But if we actually went with totally being accurate on heights all the time, always, we never would have gotten a Hugh Jackman Wolverine. And that would have been one of the most devastating things that X-Men ever could have done, was not cast that man as Wolverine. So I think that it's going to be totally fine that she's not the exact right height. I know that you all can't see it, but I hope that I put the emphasis on the quotes in there.
Yeah.
Because she's going to do a great job, and she's almost perfect for it, except for the being too tall part.
I mean, let's face it, Sony Pictures is absolutely world renowned for their special effects work. They'll be able, if they want her to mirror Moraine's height, they can easily make her mirror Moraine's height. And
Oh,
for
yeah.
the hair color, hair dye, people use it literally every day.
Oh, yeah.
So
A lot of people who shouldn't use it every day.
yeah, that's true.
Accurate.
I don't want to flashbacks. Anyway,
Right.
long time
Anyway,
ago.
so congratulations to her. That's fantastic. I think she's going to do a great job. I don't think that anybody here at this particular podcast disagrees.
Oh yeah, I definitely don't disagree. It is, as I've said in the Discord, finally time for Miranda Frost redemption arc.
Indeed.
From bad girl or villain, female villain, that's probably more appropriate to say, than to arguably savior of
Kinda.
sorts. Yeah. But today we are talking about chapter 55 of The Lord of Chaos, which everybody knows and everybody's excited to see down the line in the TV series, is the full chapter on Dumai's Wells. There's a couple of pre-chapter 55 stuff we have to go through. Clarification on last week's podcast, because I was going back through and re-looking again. It was, in fact, Bearlane that basically comes out of the throne room. I believe it's the throne room, or enters the Sun throne room with Rand's sword and belt, showing that definitive that Rand has been kidnapped. And that's whenever Sulin finally decides that her toe is done and sheds the white of the Gaishain and redons the Cadden sword to go and find her adoptive brother.
Interesting. I really did think that it was 100% Sulin who actually did that whole thing. But you're right. It actually would have been weirder for her to have done it, given her absolute and utter, Aiel nature of not being willing and or able to carry swords. So I should not be surprised.
Because I think we only see an instance of an IL remotely carrying a sword with Avienda.
Correct. When she
and even then
actually
it's-
gifts Layman's sword to Rand.
Yeah, and even then, it's like wrapped up like a package from Chernobyl.
Yep.
So, but so yeah, just clarification on that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's no problem. But some building up to it. Well, before we do any building up to it, JD, since you weren't able to be with us last podcast, is there anything from the rest of the Lord of Chaos that stands out that you want to talk about very briefly, or do you just want to press on with us getting up to and through Demise Wells?
Also, just real quick, if you want to go ahead and make sure that we let people know that this is gonna have some information.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler
Yes.
warning. We might want to do that.
No, I listened to it. You guys pretty much covered everything. So onward we go. This podcast, we're going to be discussing
Nice.
the Battle of Dumai Wells and its ramifications. So if you have not read up to the end of Lord of Chaos, please stop listening now for fear that it will be spoiled for you.
Indeed.
Yes. And if we decide to talk about ramifications that last after the battle, we'll say again, hey, from this point on, there could be spoilers for further in the series. If I don't hit a box and make a weird noise on my microphone, that'll confuse me later. It's what I just did. I just slapped a box next to me, and I'm like, that's going to be weird in editing. But we'll say something there for those of you that do want to go through Demise Wells, but you don't want to risk anything beyond book 6.
Indeed.
So, I think last podcast we got up. We got up through Rand being kidnapped, right?
Sort of. Yeah,
Sort of.
we did touch on him actually getting kidnapped, but we didn't really go into the kidnapping itself.
Okay, so the kidnapping itself happens in the aptly named chapter. The Taking is chapter 51 of Lord of Chaos. And it's one of those mornings. Sulin is still trying to meet her toe. She's still wearing the Gaishin white. Lou's there and has a couple things to say in his head. And Rand finds himself concerned that Min has not arrived yet.
Yep.
And she's actually at the Wise One's tents with Sorella. Because Sorella,
Sorelia.
There we go, Sorelia. Which I'm sure still. Anyway, wants Min to view some of the Aes Sedai as she meets with them to kind of help fill them out and everything. Rand can tell that Alana is a day closer thanks to her the unfortunate bond they share.
Indeed.
We talked about last time. And then when they get to the Rand goes to the Grand Hall and Chad enters and announces that the Aes Sedai, Corian, Galena, and Katarine are entering, accompanied by a dozen serving girls with treasure chests. And no sooner did the doors close that Rand suddenly feels himself shielded and realizes that the serving girls are really Aes Sedai. And 5 of the Aes Sedai are literally too young to have taken on the ageless face yet. And the rest of them all kept their heads down. And Louis Theron, as he often does, flees into the deep recesses of Rand's mind, screaming, as I probably would do as well. Like, I just picture like the most shrill, stereotypical, like small child / girly scream that you've ever heard, and it just slowly fades to where you can't hear it anymore.
Oh, I love the idea that it'd be like the Wilhelm scream, and it would just be like, "Oh!" Wow! And then he'd just like go off, and the Rand would be like, "What was that?" And like for a moment, he'd just be like, "I have no idea what just happened."
Or like the R2D2 scream.
Yes. The Wilhelm scream computerized.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
And then Galena decides that she takes over at that point and tells Katarine to go and take the dragon scepter, which if you remember is that the top half of a Shan Chan spear that has now been engraved with dragons that Rand carries around to remind him that there are threats beyond the Westlands, and they take it as a souvenir. Which if you didn't already dislike Galena and Katarine and her company, that kind of behavior, I think adds to it because it doesn't really
I
seem
mean,
like a very holistically Aes Sedai thing to do to take souvenirs. I could see them taking like historical objects and stuff, or objects of the power. But I don't really see them taking like trophies. It's kind of weird to me. I don't know why.
also they just kidnapped Ryan. We can not good people. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's probably a better reason to not like them, to be honest. Not because they stole his, the dragon scepter,
Yes.
but because they
That
kidnapped
was
the dragon
it
reborn.
was exactly the wrong thing
So
to
it's
do.
it's kind of like that what is it, the Confucian fable of like trying
But
to avoid your fate, you often create it. They're so worried
Yeah.
about the dragon doing something that destroys Aes Sedai that they've essentially set that fully in motion up to this point.
Yep.
It's that have you seen the meme of the guy that he either was born without arms or lost his arms, and he's like shooting archery, and the judge puts the medal around his neck and goes to like shake his hand, and it plays that.
I think that I actually have.
that was not the
That's kind of like this moment, except just instead of embarrassing, it's just dumb.
Yes. Well, we all know that at least the Elida led.
that wasn't the one I was thinking of.
What were you thinking of?
Oh, did you guys hear about the guy in Texas this past week? Tried to shoot up the federal building and didn't make it to the front door.
Yeah. Yep. Well, nobody really should accuse the Elida-led White Tower of actually being particularly good at anything. There are so many different currents and whatnot going on inside that anyone who actually succeeds at doing anything well is doing it mostly by accident.
Yes. Succeeding in spite.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they get Rand stuffed into one of the, now I guess would actually be a treasure chest because there wasn't jack shit in it. Now there is. The treasure of their salvation that they are handling most roughly.
Right.
But and Bane is waiting outside as one part of the guard detail wherever Rand is, and that's specifically the Grand Hall there. And the Aes Sedai leave, and Galena tells Bane that Rand just left, and they're sick and tired of waiting for him, so they're going back to the tower. And kind of plays a bit on the ignorance that or non-understanding that the IL have for Westlander politics and culture,
Well,
as to how weird of a sudden turnaround that would be.
Yep.
But Bane and Chad go to find him and can't find him. Go ahead.
they also play on the fact that Rand likes to pop in and out,
Yep.
Yep.
I was about to get into that. Rand,
and he doesn't really tell anybody where he's going, what he's doing, when he's going to come back. So they just assume, yeah, oh, he just popped out through one of his gateways. That's no big deal.
Yep.
I mean, it's still a big deal to them because
they're pissed at him.
Yeah, it's very insulting to them. But they know it happens a lot. So Rand kind of delays. I think it's about a 6-day delay that we ultimately have in between his kidnapping and when Perrin and then finally discover that he's actually been kidnapped. He didn't just leave.
Correct.
But Rand later on, it's later that there's been this whole thing between Perrin and Fael and Berlane, where Perrin's he's actually being a good guy. He's not doing anything wrong. But Berlane is all about trying to get on that hammer D just to show that she can, and it pisses off Fael, as Daniel talked about last time.
Yep.
That it keeps Fael pissed at Perrin, which reinforces that kind of like young, mad for no real reason, jealousy kind of thing.
Yep.
But then there's also that later knowledge that Perrin just needs to set her straight, is kind of how she wants to feel. which we get that from how her mother and father interact. That's part of their culture. So, yeah, if you get mad about that, you're judging somebody else's culture, and that's fucked up.
A little bit.
Yeah. But Nandera enters looking for Rand, and that's whenever she tells Perrin that he likes to disappear sometimes like this. It happens. Don't be worried. Then it immediately cuts back to Rand's point of view that shows there is reason to worry because he thinks he's in a small room. It's actually a cage. He's been there long enough to feel hungry. He's still sore from being kept in one of the treasure chests. And that's when we find they're using 6 Aes Sedai to hold his shield. And it's been talked about several times where it takes, that no man can resist 13 women trying to shield him at one time by himself. But once the shield is in place, it's far easier to maintain than it is to create initially.
Yep.
And that's whatever he starts to notice because he's always kind of softly prodding at the shield, that he can feel the 6 soft points on the shield, and that starts his whole thing about, well, maybe I can use this to escape somehow. And he starts to again chastise himself for getting some of Moiraine's advice about letting Aes Sedai get too close, because that's not heeding that advice has now bit him twice in this book alone. With Alana, and then now with the McAssholes from the White Tower.
I like it.
Yeah,
it's a good nickname.
Yeah, the McAssholes. And there's others that can channel that walk by the house where these Aes Sedai are staying, and they're so used to feeling channeling there that they don't think anything.
Yep.
But Cerelia, am I saying that right this time? Did I magically get it?
It's close enough.
Okay, that's all I need. Close enough. It was like hand grenades and horseshoes.
Also, it's a little bit. Michael Kramer and Kate Redding are not 100% consistent on their pronunciation of it either. So I think you're okay. One of them calls her Sorelia. The other one calls her Cerelia, and that is not terribly different, but it is slightly different, and so it's fun.
Robert Jordan is even consistent with the pronunciation. We know that as a fact.
Yeah. Just goes to show you, like, that Robert Jordan made some very interesting names and really helps you believe that it is like a foreign language.
Yep.
But anyway, Cerelia, which I guess I'm going to say it now, at least for that time, can detect. Fine. Yeah, she detects channeling where the Aes Sedai is saying, pays it no mind that there's always channeling, like I've said. But she is the oldest living wise one. She starts to suspect something is wrong because Min has vanished on her way from the tents to the Sun Palace. And Cerelia does not like coincidences. Her old age has taught her that coincidences often mean something bad. So that's when we kind of get the hint that the Aes Sedai have taken Min as well. But there's no indication that they know of her ability to view things. Though it is possible, because I think Elida knew whenever Suan and Min were still there, or at least suspected, since Min was always going to see Suan.
Correct.
So I think that could be a thing there, but I don't have anything concrete to prove that or anything as of this moment.
Sure.
So, and then over the course of the next 4 chapters, chapter 53, the Feast of Lights, that's whenever Barreling comes to the throne room with Rand's sword, and that's whenever everybody realizes that he's been kidnapped, and there begins the search.
Indeed.
So Barreling's excuse for searching Rand's rooms was, she's like, I was worried. She apparently was the only one that thought that it was strange that the Aes Sedai stopped coming, because they had been coming to the palace relentlessly since they arrived.
Yep.
And she herself had 10 Aes Sedai visits suggesting that she leave after Rand was gone. suggesting
Which
that,
she thought was a little odd.
yeah, it's a little weird. And that's when Dobrain rises again, or again raises the idea of the fact that Colivert is making a play for the Sun Throne.
Yep.
And Berlane says she has proof that Colivert is responsible for Marengild and Milan's deaths.
Yep.
She brought 2 thief catchers with her from Maine, and Perrin thinks that Danil and the 2 Rivers men are only halfway to Kirian. But he plans to go after Rand anyway. Loyal says he'll go. Dobrain says that he'll bring 500 of his men. And that's whenever Sorella, Ruark, Amiss, and Andera from the IL enter. Mm-hmm. And Andera hands Sulin her cat and sword and tells her a month and a half, yeah, that's a measurement of time now, mouth and a half. A month and a half was far too long for her to meet her toe, which is kind of insulting because you're not supposed to talk to another person about how they meet their toe and that kind of stuff. But correct. I think it's situationally dictated that it's fitting for the situation. Like, okay, we appreciate what you did, but you waited far too long. So maybe they're close enough to deal with that.
Probably.
Yeah. But you wanna pick up from here? Because we don't need to dwell too long on the stuff that leads up to Dumai's Wells. I know I've been kind of going like far too detailed. So if you want to help me out here and summarize some of the rest of this, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So they basically make a strong party going up to get Rand. And Perrin actually convinces a lot of the wise ones that since Rand has been taken by the Aes Sedai, that it's actually going to take a lot of women who are able to channel and willing to channel to get him back. And he does sort of understand their cultural aversity to going ahead and doing that. There's a lot that goes into being a wise one and being able to channel and how that affects battle and how that affects societies and things like that. But he does, basically make the point that, as you said earlier, Rand is the savior of the world. And if everybody actually believes that, then they're gonna need to go ahead and do what needs to be done in order to get him back, because the White Tower is absolutely going to bungle this. And so Perrin basically leading this actually relatively large force up to up to catch the Aes Sedai who have taken Rand. He ends up with Dobrain's men. Berlane doesn't end up coming because he convinces her, or Ruark actually convinces her that if she actually goes with, it'll set off too many red flags. But I think that she does actually send a small contingent of soldiers. Ruark comes with, most of the wise ones come with, and they all go after Rand and the Aes Sedai. And on the way there, they are actually almost at the place that will, the place called Dumai's Wells that will eventually be the battle place, which we'll get to in a moment. But before they actually make it there, the party is found by all of the Aes Sedai that are coming from Caemlyn to meet up with Rand and Carrion. And so the 2 Rivers men are with them. All of the Aes Sedai, or not all of them, but too many of the Aes Sedai end up joining the party, including Karuna and Bera, as well as Marana and Alana, and Varen, who are all of the most notable ones that are in the party. And Karuna and Bera try to go ahead and take charge, and Perrin's kind of like, nah, that's not going to happen. But you can come with us if you want, which is one of the moments that Perrin really comes into his own. He's done this a couple of times in the 2 Rivers to Varen and Alana when they were there, as he was becoming Lord of the 2 Rivers, basically, or Lord of Emmons Field. But this is the moment where he really is just like, hey, I don't care about the power. I mean, like, it is something that I need to be aware of, but you guys don't actually hold any more control over people and their lives. Um, and then they catch up to the Aes Sedai that have Rand prisoner at Dumai's Wells, and they come on to this scene that is absolute chaos. Because at this point, sort of unbeknownst to anyone on the way up, there has been some other betrayal to these Aes Sedai from an outside source that is a little bit of a surprise.
Yes. I wanted to interject before we get too far, because the way chapter 54, The Sending, ends with a message from the wolves to Perrin
Oh, yes.
is like the best, like, hey, shit's about to go down. Because
Yep.
at the point that they get close to, because Alana's been, along with the thief catchers, have been helping them like beeline it straight for Rand.
Yep.
It's the morning of the 10th day since Rand has been kidnapped, and the wolves call out to Perrin, because Perrin has sent a message out to the wolves as well.
Correct.
What do the wolves call the Dragon Reborn? I can't remember.
Shadow Killer.
Yeah, Shadow Killer. That, that basically that Aes Sedai have kidnapped Shadow Killer, which the wolves are automatically on board for. They're like, yeah, we're gonna help you find them. This is bullshit.
Yep.
And the chapter 54 ends with the wolves calling out to Perrin, sending the wolf equivalent of the message of "Come now, many two legs, many, 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 come now." And of course, Perrin sees all this in images and scents and sensations, is how it's relayed. Basically saying, "Get your ass here. There's a lot of fucking two legs that are fighting. There's a lot of people here."
Yep.
Which is, I can't think of a better way to lead into chapter 55.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, there's never a moment where you can actually really forget that Perrin has this capability to speak with the wolves and communicate with the wolves, and that, he is, in some small way, he has become ever so slightly wolf himself. But basically, when he's in cities is the parts where you can kind of forget. And while he always talks about, other people's scents and things like that, there are other characters who actually have very similar abilities. They just come from other sources. But when he's out in the world and he's out sort of in anywhere rural, or he really needs something, is always when he goes ahead and calls on the wolves. And they're some of the coolest exchanges. And any time the books say "we come" is just so chilling and so cool that I don't actually have any idea how they're going to go ahead and do, Perrin's abilities in the show, but I'm really excited to see how they do it, because it's going to be cool.
Yeah, I think they're gonna do, that kind of stereotypical, kind of echoey, like you're hearing this in your head kind of voice. And instead of trying to do like flashes of images and sense, they might explain how it works, I think. Because Elias and Perrin kind of explain it.
Yeah.
Hello, Tiger. Sorry, my dog just like decided to spaz her head for a second.
Right?
She's like,
It's all good.
so the fun thing about my dog, beyond everything else about my beautiful dog, is you've watched the Harry Potter movies, right?
Uh-huh.
Remember how like Dobby's ears look?
Mm-hmm.
That is almost exactly how my dog's ears looked in terms of like shape.
Aww.
So I keep saying she has Dobby ears. Tiger,
That's
lay
pretty
down.
adorable.
Lay down, baby. Good girl. What was I about to say? My dog distracted me.
You were talking about the way that they were gonna, the likely way that they would sort of show the wolf interaction in the show.
Yeah. Well, so my best prediction is that they'll explain it maybe a couple times whenever it comes up. They might have to do some additional explaining later on because of the time passing in between instances that we see it even in the books. But I think they'll ultimately just translate it into one or two ways. Either you'll just kind of hear that kind of echoey, it's in the head voice, and it'll just be the words, or Perrin will have to vocalize it somehow. That hey, the wolves say this, or I have a it's gonna have to be something like that because I don't see them just most of the time. I don't see them every time the wolves talk with Perrin flashing up images.
Yeah, that would get a little
Yeah.
tedious, especially given that, like, again, almost most of the information that Perrin gets is actually new information, and so they could actually have kind of images and stuff put together for some of the most iconic lines that actually get repeated by the wolves. But overall, it's actually going to need to be in a very, communicative way. And images and flashes are not going to be the most communicative way. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, if for like this scene where they're like many two legs, many come, you hear the voice, but you also see like those kind of like flashbacky images of like thousands upon thousands of IL running.
Yeah.
Like that I think that would be pretty dope. That would be really cool. I
Yeah.
was just
And if
thinking
they
about it since a
can
shiver down my
come
spine.
up with a way to go ahead and just like have a sort of set, thing of images and like a really great voice just saying "we come," oh man, that would just be like, that's going to be one of the most memorable things from this series if they can get that right, because I have a lot of confidence that they can, but it'll take some thinking to figure out what the right way to do is for that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So into chapter 55. That starts with Galwin's point of view.
yes,
So that's when I think we already know that Galwin and the younglings are with the Aes Sedai that have taken Rand, and
yes,
it's
that has
only
been
been
established both by their presence earlier when you actually see Galena's party, or at that point Corin's party, leave, as well as when Egwene steals all of her kind of creepy gross moments with Gawain in the inn in Kyrian.
oh yeah. So Galwin at this point has only known for a few days that the Aes Sedai are holding Rand prisoner, and even he thinks the beatings are disgusting because they have been
Oh yeah,
nonstop beating and punishing the crap out of Rand. Initially, I think it was the couple times he tried to escape, they could feel him prodding against the shield and that kind of stuff. But it seems like after then it just became a daily or every other day kind of ritual. I don't think there was ever more than like a day or two that the book tells us that he was not beat.
correct. And those actually kick off from the two Aes Sedai that he actually kills their warders in an escape attempt once he realizes that Min is with them and that she's been hurt.
Yeah,
So it's kind of a snowball effect of, oh, well, they got Min and they ended up hurting her in the process. So he tried to free her. So they tried to stop him. So he killed their warders. So they beat him every day.
yeah. So
And I mean, based on the bond, it absolutely makes sense. But at the same time, it is definitely one of those things where if you're not Aes Sedai, you don't get it. And you're probably going to stand there not really being okay with it.
yeah, definitely. So Galwin is of course maintaining the regular soldier type security for the Aes Sedai. And one of the scouts that he keeps out, Benji Dalfor, rides back from the north, and he reports that he was wounded by IL and then dies right after giving his report to Galwin. So Galwin sends Jisao to halt the wagons and haul Muir to ready Rajar and the other younglings at the rear. And of course, Galena is pissed that he called a halt. She's like, the IL are the Shido, and Savannah just sent them as an escort. And Galwin's like, they killed one of my guys. They could be Rand's IL. and so she agrees that they should be cautious.
Yep.
And there's a whole lot of this kind of like
For the
setting up,
first
trying
time
to,
in her entire life.
yeah. There's a whole lot of this set up for the tension because Rand is in the chest. He can feel that Alana is far nearer for the last I don't know what 6 days, 6, 5, 4, 4, yeah, something like that. Last several days, he's felt Alana continuously get closer and closer and closer. Luce Theron continues moaning and complaining about the dark. And it's only now Galena, Aran, and Katarine that beat him more than once.
Mm-hmm.
And in his free time, Rand just feels on the shield.
Which, to be fair, was actually a really, again, one of the many bad calls that the Aes Sedai had, was to just kind of leave him in a box thinking about and testing their shield so that he could figure out exactly how to get out of it when they were distracted.
Yeah. And now after that, this is the point now because they pull Rand's prison box treasure chest out of the wagon, but they don't open it. And upon fearing that they're going to leave him in the chest all night, he screams for them to let him out. And it switches back to Perrin's point of view, where Perrin, Ruark, Cirilla, Dobrain, and Karuna peer over a rise. And that is the scene. They see the scene that Daniel was alluding to.
Yep. Because this is where you actually 100% find out that Savannah and the other Shido have actually betrayed the Aes Sedai that they had claimed they were going to work with. And when they look over into this scene, there are thousands of Shido, including wise ones, basically laying siege to the Aes Sedai wagons that are carrying Rand Gawain and his younglings.
Yeah, and all their supplies. Now,
and all their supplies.
I think it's important to remember too that prior to this point, that little box device joke we made about walkie-talkies last time, Savannah has been in fairly consistent communication with one of the Forsaken.
Correct.
And I get the impression from their conversations and how Savannah talks and how just self-centered Savannah is naturally. And especially how much she hates Rand for what happened between him and Coldane. Well, it's Coldane, right? I am saying that right. Couladin. There, see? I see the word in my head. I just can't translate it to my mouth.
It's all good.
Cord, something like that. I need a non-speaking part. If I need to be pregnant Elaine when she doesn't speak, apparently. Anyway, I get the impression that this was always her plan. Make the Aes Sedai do the hard work of getting him out of the city, and as soon as they're far enough away from anywhere they might possibly get help from, which they are at Dumai's Wells, because they are. I think Gawain knows they're like 4 days to a week from the next closest water source,
something like that. Yeah.
That like this is the time to strike. If we can get Rand for the Forsaken, they'll reward us, beyond measure, and I'll get to take him. And you know what? If I want to, I'll just kill him because no one can defeat my Shido.
Well, except that, of course, she doesn't want to kill him at all. She wants to marry him.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
She absolutely wants to be the wife of the Kara Karn so that she can mold. I mean, she's basically a Lida Light. Like, she just wants to go ahead and shape Rand from being married to the Chief of Chiefs rather than just, like, hold him in a cell and mold him until the last battle. Because the Aiel don't actually even necessarily have the same prophecies of the dragon that he is going to end up in the last battle and whatnot. She just wants him to go ahead and take over the world.
Oh, yeah. She's like Viking Elida.
Basically.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess the overall point I was making still remains that they're, especially going through a second read or looking back at the battle and how things have been going just over Lord of Chaos, that I think you can see that this was always Savannah and her fellow wise ones with her's plan.
Oh
where
yeah.
they would use the Aes Sedai while they could and then betray them as soon as it was convenient for them, because it's not like Savannah and them have any issues going against much tradition. Traditionalist bastards. But I think this is a good time to just go over the pure numbers that are involved in this entire battle.
Oh yeah.
So, do you want me to do that, or do you have the breakdown?
Go ahead.
All right.
It's all you.
So, we'll start off with the smallest force, which is Rand's kidnappers. There are 39 Tower Aes Sedai that are now led by Galena. Among them are 15 reds, 12 whites, 10 greens, 1 gray, and 1 brown. The colors being their Ajas, of course.
Yes.
And among them, we know also the names of 4 Black Aja sisters. And Galwin is there leading 582 younglings. So that is currently the force that is being besieged by the Shido IO, which are led by Savannah. There's approximately 40,000 IO warriors. They're
Which
laying
makes
siege.
them by far the largest force included in this particular fight.
Yes. And they are laying siege to a force of under 700.
Yes.
I don't even think they reached
Now
650.
these Aes Sedai are absolutely holding their own fairly well because they are so much better trained. But at the same time, I mean, they are. It is definitely a war of attrition here, where it is a question of whether the Shido bodies or the sisters' tiredness will win out. But of course, we never end up getting to see, or sort of having to see, which one happens because so much other stuff happens. But anyway,
Yeah.
the other force.
Well, there's still more. With included in that 40,000 IO warriors of the Shido are also the wise ones of the Dumai Shido who could channel, which comes out to about 300. The sheer number of Chandler to Chandlers just under 10 to 1. Right? Yeah.
Correct.
So I had to recheck math in my head. I'm not very good at math.
No, you're good. Yeah, it's about 30 Aes Sedai and about 300 wise ones. And so even though the wise ones are very capable and whatnot, they are not quite as well trained in just sheer use of the power as the Aes Sedai. But it is definitely an overwhelming number of power users.
Yes. And I think the sheer numerical difference shows that left alone, the Shido IL would have surely overwhelmed the Tower Aes Sedai and the younglings. It was just a matter of time. There's trained or not trained, 40 or 39 Aes Sedai aren't going to hold out against 300, what they would call wilders, and another 40,000 IO. They just can't divert that attention between the two and hold everything long enough. Oh, and by the way, maintain a 6-person shield minimum on the Dragon Reborn, who has been continuously trying to understand it and break out of it.
Yep.
Now,
which ends up being, again, part of their undoing in the end, is the fact that they choose to focus their attention on the Shido, which is definitely sort of the right thing to do in the moment, but as we see later, not necessarily the right thing to do overall.
Yeah. So now for Rand's rescuers, this whole party that is now being gathered under Perrin, advancing towards Rand's kidnappers. There's about 1,000 wolves that are, they say, led by Perrin, but they don't really need to be led. They can differentiate.
It's a rough lead.
Yeah. It's a rough lead. Like, Perrin's like, we're coming now, and the wolves are like, and we're going to, because I think they're rushing at the IL laying siege, and the wolves just appear up out of the grass running.
Yep.
And it's a super dope scene like that. This is going to be like the most cinematically satisfying scene, I think, in the entire TV series.
Oh, it's going to be the scene from the trailer of Infinity Wars.
Oh, yeah.
where you just have this giant force of characters who we know, and certainly some that have names and such. But then on the other side, you've got Perrin at the head of this column of Ruark, who we know, and Karuna, who we've met, and all of these wolves that pop out of nowhere, and all of these Mayenners and
yeah,
it's gonna be great.
Yeah. So the rest of this rescue force, there's 300 Two Rivers men led by Dano Lewin, 500 Carinian men led by Dobrain Taborwin, 200 winged guards from Maine led by Havin Norel, 9 Saladar Aes Sedai, 94 Aiel Wise Ones led by Azarilla, and approximately 6,000 Aiel led by Ruhark. 5,000 are the Siswai Aman. Siswai
And the other 1,000 are maidens.
Yeah, Fardar Smai. And then, of course, there is Loyal, son of Arent, son of Halan, there. And that is the total forces that you see rushing together. There's another significant portion of the forces that come to Rand's rescue, but they're not immediate.
Correct.
And that's so excited.
Yeah. And of course, in the end, I mean, Perrin, in so many ways, definitely thinks they're going down there to die. Because, I mean, again, looking at his force versus this 40,000 strong force of Shido, and while they actually have a significant number of channelers or power users or whatever you want to call them as well, I mean, theirs also pales in comparison to the Shido as well. Perrin absolutely knows that as long as they can make it to Rand, they'll be okay. Yeah. Because hopefully Rand can go ahead and make a gateway, but he's absolutely ready to nope the fuck out of there rather than try and stay and fight, because they will be overwhelmed.
Yeah, because there's only
100%.
There's only 8,100 as of this point, about 8,100 total force coming to Rand's rescue.
Yep.
And I think that is the entire plan that Perrin sets up with Ruhark and everyone else, and Dobrain and everyone right next to him is like, look, we're just going to try to rush through, get to Rand, he'll open a gateway, and we'll all just get the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole plan.
That is all of his plan. Yeah.
No inclination. We're just going to run in, cut through, get Rand, he'll make a gateway. Hopefully he's not too tired, and we'll go. Because I think basically, even one of them asks, like, well, what if he can't do it? Then he's like, well, then we die.
Yep. And I think my favorite part of that is like, oh, then all of us die. Probably Rand dies, and nobody even really knows that this happened here because nobody like reports it to anybody.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, cool. This sucks, but this is the best plan we have. Let's go.
And then so everyone except for the IL are like, oh no. And then the IL like, okay.
Yep.
They're like, Ruark's like, fuck it. It's better to die this way than growing old. Let's do it.
Right. I mean, in fact, I think this is one of the parts where he mentions, he's like, yep, this has all been a really good dream. And we're all going to wake up probably by the end of today. So let's go.
Wake up probably here within the next 10 minutes or so. So,
yep.
So after this talk and they see what's going on, they realize they have to get back. Perrin talks with the Wise Ones outside, and they are supposed to stay back from the fighting.
Correct.
Which, for the Wise Ones, is fine.
Yes.
For the Aes Sedai, that's not a good thing. Because, as we know, unless the Aes Sedai are in direct danger or defeating Shadow Spawn, they are not allowed to use the one power offensively. They have to be in direct danger or basically attacking the Shadow, defending against the Shadow to offensively use their power. So the Aes Sedai are like, not really, but whatever. Perrin gets off of, he doesn't want to ride Stayer or Stepper into battle. He loves horses, and he knows that his wife will be pissed if he loses, is Stepper Fios? Because the Two Rivers men brought her horse with them as well. I think Stayer is Perrin's.
I think it's the other way around. I actually think that Stayer is hers and Stepper is his.
Could be,
but
right.
Again, I could be backwards. Let me look it up.
Yeah, I think No, I think Stayer is parents because unless he gives it to File. Nope, Stayer is parents.
Stayer his parents? All
Yeah,
right,
because
cool.
that's the horse he takes from the Sunpower stables when he leaves to follow Rand in chapter 54. Yeah, so we actually just met Stayer in chapter 54, Lord of Chaos.
Nope. Other way around.
Is it?
Yeah, Stepper is the horse ridden by Perrin Aybara. Stepper is a dun stallion. Perrin named him due to his quick feet. Oh, no, Stayer is one of the horses also owned by Perrin Aybara. So neither of those is actually Fail's horse.
Oh, I thought he gave one of them gave her one of the horses when they were in Two Rivers.
It's possible, but it's not one of those two, at least not right now.
Oh. Either way, Perrin doesn't want to see either horse hurt. So he leaves them back with the Wise Ones and Aes Sedai. Aram, the crazy ex-tinker, is like just full on bloodlust because he's all like giddy and excited as they move into attack. And that's whenever Perrin calls the wolves to come, and Loyal has that nice big hefty ass axe that he's using. And that's whenever Perrin sees Karuna, Barra, Feldrin, and Missouri in the thick of battle and wonders what they're doing there.
Yes, which in my humble opinion, I don't actually like that answer. I mean, they don't actually give a satisfying answer to why they came in. They just want to be there when Rand is found and saved. And I get it. I mean, like, they do have this kind of thing where they talk about needing to be in the thick of things, but at the same time, we all, or in my humble opinion, I think they're lying when they come in, and they really could have stayed on the outside and defended the Wise Ones like they were supposed to. And then they wouldn't have been able to fight the Shido unless they came close. But you can almost guarantee that the Shido would have gone after them because they have no honor, and they would have gone after Wise Ones anyway. But this is a speculation. She definitely gives the reason as being they needed to be in the thick of the fighting to use the power, but I think it's BS.
Yeah. And in the midst of all this battle comes the last little bit but most influential part of those that are coming to rescue Rand. Because Perrin is sitting there fighting through all these IL, trying his best not to die, as everyone else is trying to carve a path with that axe of his straight through. And then he hears a hollow boom, and a gateway opens up, and 200 Ashaman just pour out of the gateway.
Yep.
And like you're already like, oh shit, when the battle happens. Then the gateway opens, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, in fact, I think described in the book, it's actually a handful of gateways that all open.
Oh yeah, it is.
And they, 200 Ashaman pour out of like, gateways that are just dotting the whole battlefield, which in some ways, I mean, is literally just the bringing of gateways into the middle of this fight is in and of itself a weapon. And it's probably slicing quite a number of Shido just apart when they appear. And then, of course, they come in and just start devastating everything around them as Ashaman themselves as well.
Yes. So when they first emerge, they use offensive to push back the Shido, and then they create a giant dome of air basically to keep the Shido out. And you see the Shido just rushing forward and bouncing off of this invisible like dome that they don't even understand. And the lightning that the Shido Wise Ones are calling down is hitting the dome and having no effect. And everybody's just kind of like, the shit just happened. What is this?
This has completely derailed our battle. We don't have any way to fight this.
But in the midst of this, after the Ashaman show up, Rand feels 3 points of that shield being tied off, and at that point, the Aes Sedai from the tower, and by consequence, the Shido and anyone else that after this point Rand hates, have sealed their fate.
Oh yeah.
because Lou's Theron is back and giving Rand instructions on how to untie the knots from the shield. And
Mm-hmm.
he very quickly rushes through the shield and then unties those 3 points and shatters the rest of the shield. So as he can only channel where he can see, he blows up the box that he's in with air, which deafens him for a bit. There are 3 Aes Sedai by the box. 2 of them have been knocked unconscious by this, and 1 is sitting there screaming.
Yep, because
And
all
those,
3 of them have actually been completely cut off from the source, not just for the moment, but for good.
yes. And these 3 are Igraine, Ronal, and Sashal are the name of those 3 Aes Sedai.
Yep.
And yeah, so Rand is still Min is also near the chest, but she's okay. Tavir Nature at work there, thankfully. And she's like, make a gateway. We gotta go. And he's like, I couldn't if I wanted to. I don't know the area well enough to make a gateway.
Yep.
And so he's like, but here's what I'll do instead. And he just starts knocking out and shielding every Aes Sedai he can find.
Yep. Which, of course, there were only 39 to start with. He immediately stills 3 of them, which brings their number down to 36. We get the feeling that probably most of them are still alive, because they were able to actually be on the defensive mostly against the Shido, but it's very possible that their number is less than 36 because some of them have been captured or killed. And so he's basically like walking around their camp, just knocking them out one by one and just dropping their numbers, 35, 34, 33, 32, as the Shido are, doing their best to go ahead and get into the wagons. And then, of course, before he's done with his task, the Ashman show up. They plow into all of this that's happening and create a dome over this situation after Rand has actually taken out, like, basically, in essence, at least a third of these sisters who are still inside it.
Yes. Also, because I meant to say it before we actually started getting into Miswells, but if anybody's wondering why you haven't heard JD, his internet cut out again.
Yeah.
And it does. He says it's not coming back. He sent me a message said that the internet connection won't come back. So that's where he's been for the last 30 minutes or so. That Daniel and I have been too excited about Demise Wells to say what we probably should have. I might edit it in further, like earlier. I don't know yet. It depends on how hard it is to do, but
that would make sense.
All right. So after Rand knocks out and shields like about 4 or so Aes Sedai, Galwin shows up and he's like, "Hey, I'll take Min out of here. There's no place for her." And she's like, "Fuck you! I'm staying with my boo. I mean Rand." And she's like, "Galwin, don't you know your sister loves Rand?" And
Yep.
Galwin's just like, "I can't deal with this. Rally the younglings." And he looks at Rand after all this, knowing that his sister loves Rand and that Egwene, at least wants Rand safe. He's like, "I'll see you dead one day," and leaves. And I'm like, it's the wrong time to try to continue the protective brother thing because you don't even know where your sister fucking is.
Oh, well, to be fair, this is not one of the moments where he's actually really protecting Elaine. I think that this is definitely a moment where, because most of Gawain's decisions, at least right now, are actually based on him thinking Rand killed his mother. And then, of course, previous to this, he has also thought that Elaine was dead as well. He does get informed by Egwene that she's fine. And so he does actually sort of, you can feel a shift in his attitude towards Rand, that he absolutely still wants to take him out and he absolutely still hates him, but almost exclusively for the fact that he thinks he killed more gays rather than anything else.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Because now he absolutely knows that. I mean, Egwene says that it's true, and there's no reason for her to, or for him to not believe her, given that she can use the power, and all he really has to go on as far as that his sister's dead is rumor. But at the same time, Gawain is also proven to be a character that is almost entirely driven by emotion And so the fact that he's having a hard time going ahead and believing what he wants to be true rather than what he fears to be true is understandable.
Yeah. A quick backtrack because I was looking through some of these notes that is on this chapter summary 455, and I remember I was always really confused why Perrin heard a hollow boom as the gateways open, and I don't know why I never realized before that it's just remarkable timing because the Ashaman appear the exact moment Rand frees himself from the box.
Correct.
And I don't know why. I just like for some reason my brain was never like, oh, that would make sense, but we're just not going to put that together.
Yep.
Another interesting fun fact is Gawain's horse is named Challenge, which is the same
Indeed.
horse he had in the Gathering Storm from chapter 4 of the Gathering Storm. Yeah. So Gawain turns to leave to ride away, and there's a full Ashaman that goes to attack him, but Rand knocks the Ashaman down, and that's whenever Taim arrives and addresses the man as Gedwin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Taim explains how he found his way here, that he went to visit Rand in Kirian. When he wasn't there, they basically said which way the people were riding or of some sort. I can't remember the exact explanation. But nonetheless, he's there now, and he offers to heal Rand, but Rand's like, you can fuck off. Because I think Taim is either like, he's even like, I'm not very good at it, but I might be able to help a little. And Rand's like, no.
Yep. Partially because Rand doesn't trust Taim, and because Rand just doesn't really... I mean, it's certainly not that he never gets healed, but he absolutely takes forever to go ahead and get healed. He is, in a lot of ways, both an Emmons Fielder and an Aielman in that way, in terms of like, no, you don't understand. My wounds are going to help me remember. And you're like, all right, cool, calm down, just get healed.
Yeah. I mean, and as part of that whole Tavir and turn of fate luck happens to be in the right way kind of thing, I firmly believe that the only reason whenever Rand emerged, he didn't just start literally burning everything around him, like with balefire or whatever he decided he wanted to use, was because Min is there. And he didn't want to risk hurting Min. If Min had not been taken as well as him, then there's a good chance that Rand could have unintentionally killed Perrin and Loyal and dozens of wolves and maybe up to 6,000 IL that were on his side and other Aes Sedai. And it would have, I think that would have been a very different turning point, because had Rand realized he killed Perrin, he would have no longer been on fighting on the side of light. I guarantee it.
Oh, almost assuredly.
If he didn't create a new Dick Mountain or Dragon Mount right there.
Right.
So thankfully, that's like the one unintentionally benefit of what the Aes Sedai did. I mean, there's more than that, but
indeed.
So, as the Ashaman are holding that dome of air, there's another dozen Ashaman that are holding a dozen Aes Sedai, including Asuna, prisoner. And Rand sees Alana and another group of 9 Aes Sedai and realizes that they're the ones that followed from Caemlyn. Perrin, Aram, Loyal, Debrain, Nandera, and Sulin are also there. He sees all of them. Ruark, and most of the other IL and the Mayanners, the Carinian and the 2 Riversmen are still outside fighting with the Shido. Taim wants to let the dome stay until they learn the area well enough to travel, even if their allies outside all die. And Perrin's like, bruh, remember all these people from our childhood? Remember Daniel, Ban, Will, Tell? They're out there and they're going to die if you let them do it. And so Rand says, Taim, open the dome. And then have the Ashaman kill all the Shido. He's like, they need to learn. They must learn. They will learn. And he's like, this is going to be a message, not just to the Shido, but I think as Rand sees it, this is going to be a message, because he knows not everyone is going to die, and he's got his own forces that are going to tell of it. This is a lesson for everyone for the entire future.
Yep. And this is the point where probably, I mean, up until this moment, Rand has basically been himself trying to become harder and harder and harder, because he understands that to actually win the last battle and maybe even survive it. He's actually just got to use everybody he can and be hard enough to go ahead and make the tough decisions. And this is the moment where he's like, yeah, kill them all. And then, of course, time goes, all right, and raises the bound or the dome a little bit and just
Before
starts.
they raised the dome, in true male battle fervor, they left a hole in the top of the dome to let the fire from the burning wagons out. And if you're outside the dome and all you can see is the smoke coming out, you suddenly see a hole in the sky open where sunlight shines down, and the dragon banner rises out of the middle of the top of the dome.
Yep.
And there's like in the show, there just has to be that dramatic pause, and I just want there to be one extra in the background that you barely hear that just goes, "Oh fuck," and then destruction.
Right.
Because it's gonna be it is absolutely biblical.
Yes. It's ridiculous. And of course, I mean, at this point, we do see Rand return to his roots a little bit, because once he sees this absolute just disgusting devastation that the Ashaman just start like literally exploding people, he's just like, all right, never mind, I take it back. Stop doing that. That was good enough. Let's do something else.
I don't think he ever backtracked on it. I think he only said stop once the Shido retreated. Because the Rand that went into the box is the I'm starting to go insane, kind of getting there pretty decently Rand. And it's just mentally unstable Rand. But the Rand that comes out of the box is the fandom's quote unquote Darth Rand.
I actually think that there's really a moment there where he can't actually handle it, though, and he says stop before they actually really start retreating, and they definitely keep running, or they definitely start and or keep running, because of course they're also like, this is ridiculous. But I feel like Rand actually does stop the atrocities before he's guaranteed that they're actually working.
I mean, he's got, excuse me. Oh, sorry. I have to edit that burp out. Anyway, I mean, as this is starting to happen, there's still some of the Two Rivers men and the rescuing forces that are not inside the dome. They are still out amongst fighting the Shido.
Truth.
And Perrin is sitting there for a moment watching in just pure utter disbelief and disgust. And even Rand, I think, has a bit of an internal monologue, because this whole last portion is from Rand's point of view.
Correct.
Where Rand is like, he feels his stomach churning. It's a disgusting sight, but he steels himself as like, this has to happen. They have to learn. And it's like one of those moments too, where there's all this going on, and Lews Therin is actually, he's either chuckling or he's just quiet, because he was initially screaming about just killing everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And after a momentary pause, Perrin is like pleading with Rand, like, stop it, please stop it. This is wrong. This is disgusting. This is horrible. Stop it. And I think it is about the same time that Perrin reminds Rand that some of his own people are out there still fighting the Shido. And I think it's all kind of happens at the same time, that Perrin reminds Rand of that. The Shido start turning and running from the front first. And of course, after a while, they have to make it through all the people that were further behind them to get out. So it's going to take a bit to look like they're retreating. And Rand's like, okay, yeah, there's several dozen thousand at least dead already. You can stop.
Yeah. And he definitely is not the person that he was, because of course, at some point, I mean, the Rand that left the Two Rivers would never have actually started or like allowed that to happen in the first place. And so there is a very dramatic change for the character of Rand, up till or at this point, as you sort of already talked about in terms of Darth Rand, because he is not the young man who left the Two Rivers by any
Oh no.
stretch of the imagination. But I think that it's almost nice that in my reading of it, I definitely saw that as a moment of like, yeah, I can be as hard as I need to be. And then, of course, this starts happening, and he goes, oh my God, I can't actually do this. You stop. Don't do that. I take it back. Because
Yeah.
he also can't really deal with it because there is just a little bit of the original Rand still in there.
Yeah. But see, and that's just where differences in feelings on the reading.
Indeed.
In my reading, I never saw any of that. I saw him see how disgusting and atrocious it was, but because I try to put myself in his shoes, is I think there's probably a lot of at least male readers of the series that kind of either intentionally or unintentionally wind up putting themselves in more of Rand's shoes than any other character. I mean, just by virtue of him being, quote unquote, the main centerpiece character for the series.
Correct.
Um, and I was like, every time that in the past that Rand has felt that he's been soft, people have died, people have been hurt that he cares about. Every time he has trusted Aes Sedai around him, he's been hurt in one way, shape, or form, betrayed, led astray, or something's been hidden from him. And now you culminate this with, a half a week to a week's worth of just absolute agonizing torture with nothing to do but sit with your thoughts. Oh, and you're sharing your thoughts with a madman that murdered everybody he knew and was insane, you know, right after, sealing the Dark One away. And I think Rand has no choice but to steel himself, and he's already been trying to steel himself against this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I see Rand come out is like he acknowledges that, yeah, I don't really have the stomach for this, but I can't let that show. I have to be this way. They have to learn, because if they see weakness, they'll attack me. And not only will other armies attack me, but the Forsaken will see me as weak, and they'll think that they can exploit me or attack me too. Because he's still very much focused on defeating the Forsaken as well.
Correct.
So I see an internal Rand, because you see the way Rand is. Spoiler for after this book, right here. You see how Rand is with men after this.
Yes.
That he is the Rand that most people very much know and love, and he's kind of the same way with when Avienda's around later on, and the same when Elaine is around later on. Prior to his salvation, but
That's fair in terms of the fact that we do actually see more of his sort of softer side and his humanity when he is with the women that he loves. And I mean, like, in some ways with his childhood friends as well. There are definitely moments where Perrin and Matt bring it out of him as well.
yeah, and even a couple others. Most notably to me is Ruark.
Yes.
And then I would say Moraine, but this is still spoilers for after the book. So
Accurate.
but at that point, we've gone from Darth Rand to Zen Rand.
Indeed.
But anyway, in spoilers, back to the kind of dwindling down ending part of Demise Wells. For now. Well, not for now. I mean, this is the dwindling part of Demise Wells. There's no like for now for it, but unless you count the start of the next book, but that's not really too much. Anyway,
not really.
So as the battle winds down, all of the pro Rand forces assimilate into the camp, and by the way, the Ashman were only using earth and fire, the two powers that male channelers are most commonly stronger than female channelers in.
Correct.
After that, Ruark and all of the other pro Rand forces enter the camp, and there's a total of about 23 Tower Aes Sedai prisoners, and Galena is not among them.
And that royally pisses Rand off.
Yes. So there's a note here that You have those initial 3 that were stilled and captured when Rand broke out of the box. There were 20 others that were captured. And I have the names if you want them, but I don't think you want to hear me read 20 names of Aes Sedai that
Nah,
don't
none
really.
of them
Yeah.
are actually terribly important on
Yeah.
their own.
12 escaped, and 3 were killed. And Galena was actually captured by the Shido, bringing our total to 39.
Correct.
Mayum is also among the 39, but her fate is not yet disclosed.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the rest of the I don't know, where was I? Kurina, Bera, and Alana lead the 9 Aes Sedai from Saladair, the ones that were coming to rescue Rand. To congratulate Rand. Marana stays at the back, and Rand is furious, telling them that he said only 6 could come,
Mm-hmm.
and that he will now place them on the same level as the other Aes Sedai, and that they must kneel to him.
And
And
they do.
oh yeah, and Tame looks at him and says, kneel to the Dragon Reborn, and they first refuse, and then Taim looks at them and says, kneel or you will be knelt, and almost smiles. And they all look at Taim, look at the Ashman, look at Rand, and collectively shit their pants as they kneel and become the first ever Aes Sedai to swear fealty, to
Mm-hmm.
Rand, the Dragon Reborn. And of course, like all the books do, it ends with a quote from some prophecy. Most of the time, it's the Corinthian cycle, and this is
Mm-hmm.
where it quotes the unstained tower, broken, bent knee to the forgotten sign. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a chilling end to the book.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, again, I mean, this is one of my favorites. Dumais Wells is obviously touted as and well deserved as, one of the most iconic scenes from the books themselves once you've read all the way through them, and for good reason. Like, this is one of the most satisfying almost ends to a book in the series.
Yeah, and it's a nice little tie together because in the footer of the epilogue for Lord of Chaos, the very first line from the Prophecies of the Dragon, translation by Jared Manyard, governor of the province of Andor, for High King Arthur Pendrag Tonriel, translated part of the Corinthian cycle. And the very first line is the unstained tower breaks and bends knee to the forgotten sign. So it pulls the whole book back to the beginning of the book and nicely wraps up Lord of Chaos, I think.
Indeed.
Oh,
And there you have it.
such an amazing chapter. Dumais Wells.
Yep.
I think anytime you do like a Q&A, especially involving with the TV series, there's always the question of, and I know whenever we did our crossover episode this past December with the White Tower, most of the time it wasn't really. I mean, there were questions with Dumais Wells, but it was mostly the easiest way to sum it up was just Dumais Wells. What do you think? How is it going to be in the TV show?
Yep.
And if they try to stick to the book and do Dumais Wells as it is portrayed in the book, and Robert Jordan literally uses the phrase, I think you might have said earlier, of meat grinder,
Mm-hmm.
to describe how the Ashaman, after Mazrim is Ashaman, kill, and they start killing. If they try to stay true to how the book describes it and depicts it, at least that one section of the series is going to have to be rated R.
Pretty much.
Just for the pure violence and gore. I mean, and nobody should be surprised by that, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's a book about magic and this. It's a children's book." No, it's not.
No,
Not at all. Not even close. Maybe book 1.
I mean, I will admit that, like, there is also a good number of other instances previous to this where it's fairly violent, and there's a lot of nakedness, and a number of other things that will definitely make this show have to be a TV mature rating even before this scene, but this is the one that's really just gonna be like, hey guys, if you have a weak stomach, don't watch this episode.
Yeah, I think it could be like PG-13 ish up until the first time that Lan, Moraine, Rand, Pear, and Egwene met, fight the Trollocs, and then escape into Shattered Logoth. Up until then, I think you can get away with PG-13. After then, you know, and there's no point
Yeah,
in for that short of a portion of the series to rate any of it PG-13.
no, it's gonna be solidly TV mature.
Yeah, either R or TVMA, because it depends too. If I don't know if they're going to include much nudity. Now, there's a very good chance that they might, because shows like Game of Thrones.
Honestly, I can't actually see them doing this particular series without it. I mean, like, it doesn't necessarily need to show every scene from the books. I mean, I'm not saying that is a thing, because Robert Jordan is using language to describe these things, and it's nowhere near like a romance novel, but he does lean into the sexual aspects of the story and whatnot, without necessarily shying away from any of those scenes and what these characters are feeling and doing and whatnot. But I think that some of them are actually pretty important, especially when you actually meet the Aiel. And I guess you could absolutely just not do it and show all of the differences in culture and whatnot without it, but it is definitely one of the most apt and culturally relevant differences and easily showable cultural differences between the Aiel and the Wetlanders, um, that really just drives the point home that these are two very, very different nations. So it'll be interesting to see how much they actually include and how much they don't. Because I think that it would not actually be a good idea to just not.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, for a significant portion of the series, the sweat tints are very commonly used
Mm-hmm.
plot devices and areas where it works for the book, but I think it's going to be even more important for the TV series that they provide essential. I don't want to say exposition, because typically that's the start, but yeah,
Yeah,
still
exposition is
exposition.
still
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're significant exposition points. There's a lot of conversations that happen in the sweat tents later on, and I think a couple before there. Well, there's definitely a couple before that are
Mm-hmm.
incredibly important. Um, now,
Also, I mean, there are a few characters that, like, you could in some ways cut out Ascendra um from the whole thing, in the Aiel Wastes and Ruidan and whatnot. But after this book, for example, I mean, there's a lot to do with Datsang and all of this different stuff, as far as like people just being forced into nakedness, and it being actually like an important part of the story in some ways to the characterization of those people at those times. So again, it'll be interesting to see what they do and don't.
yeah, and if they do decide they want to include most of the scenes on the upside for the lovely Miss Pike, there's only two scenes that she would have to worry about.
One of which is her run to
Yeah.
Ruidian.
So that could be arguably like half a scene, because it could just show like back up running away, so she can still wear pants. Um, Not to say that
Indeed.
any actor or actress or anything like that would ever be forced into doing that.
Certainly. And of course, I mean, we already saw recently that Lena Headley used a body double for her scene in Game of Thrones, for example. And so, there are definitely ways around necessarily having to have a single actor or actress do things that they're uncomfortable with. But I definitely think that it'll be important for this series. So I think that most of the actors should probably be willing, even if there are, concessions that are able and readily made for those who aren't.
Yeah. So we'll see how it all goes. So
Yep.
with talking about the TV show, I think Greg and Thorne maybe did an episode or two talking about the TV show. But if you guys, as the listeners of the podcast, would like us to do an episode talking about the TV show, kind of what we know or if have been hinted at already, and what we expect and what we think about certain things and how it's going to go, which certainly there would be one eventually when more information comes out. But it's always fun to speculate and talk about how you think things are going to be.
Indeed.
Or if you have questions about it, definitely send them to us and just let us know if we have a fair group of people that want us to do one on the TV show. Then we definitely have the flexibility to do one. So
True.
And of course, you can tell us you'd like to see it either by Twitter, just tweeting at us. You can message us on Twitter at Tower Podcast. You can email us at blacktowerpod@gmail.com. If you forget any of that stuff, or you'd rather just be able to click on something and go straight to it, of course, you can go to blacktowerpod.podbean.com. If you're already on our Twitter, just go to our profile page. It is the website link there. And eventually one of us or some of us or whatever, some of us, like there's like a whole post-production team waiting in the background. One of us will make a nice little graphic or something that we can use as a pinned tweet so that it'll have like whatever we want to have on it. Maybe our links there too, so it's easy to see. But that's something
nice.
that's in the works that one of us will have to work on at some point. But yeah, so in addition to, if you'd like to see us do an episode or start doing the occasional episode on the coming TV series, let us know what you thought about our coverage, not only on Lord of Chaos, but for this episode especially on Dumai's Wells. Are there important parts that you think we left out, things we might have glossed over, or things you would have liked to see us expand on or talk about more? Because we can always talk about things in later episodes. So we keep track of your feedback, and once we have enough on certain things, or we have enough overall, we can always do an episode where we address listener feedback and listener comments. Like we used to do the midweek follow-ups. We can do episodes like that and stuff in the future.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that about covers it.
I think so.
Let me get this yawn out of the way. Oh gosh, it's amazing how I could be wide awake talking about an exciting topic, but the second we stop, I'm like, all right, bedtime. But I got to stay up for it anyway.
All right, everybody. From all of us here at the Black Tower Podcast, I have been Daniel,
and I've been Andrew,
and we'd like to say good night and good luck on everything that you have going on for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah. Or good morning or whatever. Adjust what Daniel said to the time frame that fits you whenever you happen to be listening to this.
In fact,
yeah. So whatever time frame it is, whatever rest of whatever time we have left, we wish you a good whatever it is.
And in case I don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Bye.
Take care.